Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending this evening's program, A Conversation with Yuyi Morales. My name is Marcy Inman. I'm the Director of Exhibitions and Educational Programs at Irving Arts Center in Irving, Texas. And joining me is Yuyi Morales from Xalapa, Mexico. There will be time for Q&A near the end of the program, so please do write your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. The exhibition Yuyi Morales, Soñadora is currently on display in the Irving Arts Center's main gallery and will be up through January 30th, 2021. This beautiful exhibition features approximately 60 works of art by Yuyi Morales, who is an award-winning children's picture book author and illustrator. It was originally organized by the Nickel, the National Center for Children's Illustrated Literature in Abilene, Texas, where it opened in November of 2019. The Irving Arts Center is honored to be the first stop on its national tour. So a little about our esteemed guests. Yuyi Morales was born in Xalapa, Mexico, and immigrated to the United States in 1994 with her son Kelly when he was just a baby. And this story is told so beautifully in her 2018 picture book memoir, Dreamers. She is a 6-time recipient of the prestigious Pura Belpré Award, an annual award presented to a Latino or Latina writer and illustrator whose work best portrays, affirms, and celebrates the Latino cultural experience in an outstanding work of literature for children and youth. She received her most recent one in 2019 for her book, Dreamers. She is also the first Latina to receive a Caldecott Honor for her book, Viva Frida, in 2015. Readers and reviewers have praised her illustrations as gorgeous, joyous, magical, resplendent, and breathtaking. Her text as warm, sparkling, and poetic. Profoundly influenced by her upbringing in Mexico, her work gives poignant insight from an immigrant's perspective, speaking to the power of heritage, imagination, and hope. Welcome, Yuyi Morales. It's wonderful to be with you. Thank you so much for taking some time for us.
Thank you, Marcy, and thank you to everybody who has joined us today. And we are going to have a great time because we are going to have a conversation. Thank you, Marcy.
Yes, thank you, Yuyi. Yes, and again, thank you for all of you who are joining us this evening. So I thought we'd go ahead and launch into our conversation with a look at some of the work that's in the current exhibition. So as I mentioned, there are around 60 works of art in the exhibit from 15 of your books, Yuyi, including titles by a number of different authors that you've illustrated for, as well as the 6 books that you have authored and self-illustrated. And I have them all in chronological order. So here we are. Let's get started. So this first photograph that we're looking at, this is a picture that was taken of you in Abilene, Texas in 2019.
Yes, it was wonderful being there because they had really taken the artwork from my books and just created a space, a world in which I will enter and then suddenly find myself surrounded by all this artwork that at some point of my life I have made, but also a lot of those paintings, I haven't seen them in a long time. So I re-encountered those works when I went to see the exhibition.
Yeah, so this was for the opening at the Nickel. And so, yeah, it must have been an amazing experience for you to see so much of your work all together in one place.
Exactly. I loved it.
So tell me a little bit about how this opportunity came about.
Well, I was approached, I think it was first through my editors, and when they start talking about making this exhibit, I'm usually making a book, and my span attention sometimes is shortened by whatever book I'm working at the time. And I remember hearing about this opportunity, but I didn't know what shape was gonna take, what was gonna happen with the paintings. Like at the moment, it was too much for me to think of. And so I asked people who work for me, part of my team, to see about the exhibit and see if that's something that we want to do, because it involved people coming and looking at my paintings, which I had in storage. I moved from the United States into Mexico 7 years ago, and I put most of my artwork, I put it in storage in San Francisco, because bringing them to Mexico was just dangerous for the materials. Here where I'm at right now, which is Xalapa, Mexico, is a very humid place. Anything, any paper, any textiles, anything that is inside a drawer or anything like that will be destroyed really quickly. So I decided to leave my work there, and I came here. So when I was told that they needed to see other work and select some pieces, I actually had my son go to San Francisco and give access to these files and the artwork. And actually, he was able to see some of the work that I did when he was little, and he didn't realize I had done those paintings or the illustrations for the books, because he was still young and wasn't paying much attention. And then he was able to go and see boxes and boxes of paintings that I had created. But I didn't get to see them, like you mentioned before. I didn't get to see those works until the exhibit was up, and then I traveled and got to see the exhibition. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, I bet it was amazing for Kelly, for your son, to see your work. I'm sure it would just engendered a whole new appreciation for your body of work. Okay, well, I have some pretty casual snapshots of the installation that's at the Irving Arts Center in our main gallery. We have the title wall here, and, the north end of the gallery. Like I said, it's quite a few pieces of work. It was 60 or so, and displayed along with the illustrations are the books, of course. This is at the south end of the main gallery. And the south end again. So as I said, we are the first stop on the national tour of your show, and we're honored to have that opportunity.
I'm really happy about it.
So yeah, let's start looking at the work. So we have several pieces from your very first book, right?
That's right. That's my first book. This is a book written by Isabel Campoy, who is the partner of Alma Florada. And when I was just starting to dream that I could make books, not even make books like I was going to publish books, but make books that I could take home, something that I could create and had my stories and my illustrations. And as I was imagining that I could do that, I got to meet Alma Florada, who is a Cuban writer, and she is so generous. She offered that I could take, she's a professor at San Francisco University. I'm trying to remember the right name. And we met, and she offered that perhaps I wanted to take her class, and it was for writing. And I did that. I went and I took her class. I went one day and I loved it so much. I asked her again if she could if I could return to her class the next week, and she said yes. And I was writing there. I was learning how to write. My English, if right now it doesn't sound right enough, at the time it was even just more basic. But I was writing things, and I was trying to write them in English. But she is a published author. She's a Latinx published author. And at the end of the class, I sent her a postcard. I just made a painting, a drawing for her, and I sent it to say thank you for allowing me to be in her class. And she showed that postcard to her editor and to her partner. And they immediately say like, oh, so she doesn't only, she actually illustrates, because they didn't know that I try to do images. Alma Flor knew that I was trying to learn how to write stories. But from that, they recommended me with the editor that they were working at the moment. And they offered me if I could make this book. It's called Todas, Buenas, Manos, and it's actually a book for the school market. So I can tell you that it was a very different experience from any other books. This is much less something that I created, as it was something that I was used to make. Like I could draw, I was starting to learn how to paint, and they say, for this page, we need this, for this page, we need this, we need this. So I did the drawings, I did the paintings, and I had like 22 days to make this book. It was really short time. I work on my pajamas almost every day, and and I made it really fast. It wasn't as much as a creative exercise for me, but it was really good for testing how it is to create images for a narrative. Can I do it? Can I actually meet the deadline? It was really good for my learning. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what a great opportunity. I would think the field would be a little difficult to break into, but you seem to have that wonderful connection, and that was the creative writing class at UC Berkeley, right?
Actually, that was another class I took later.
Was it? Okay.
This one was at San Francisco State.
Okay.
San Francisco. No, it's just called San Francisco University. It's a private school in San Francisco.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. Well, I really like the illustrations to this book. We have 2 or 3 in the exhibit. The landscape, there's this wonderful rolling landscape that's just really beautiful, very evocative. Reminds me a lot of Grant Wood, the American artist. I just wonder, who were you looking at the time, or what was your inspiration?
At the moment, I didn't even have time to look at other people's work. I was kind of trying my hand on the colors, on the shapes. I'm looking right now at the image of the school bus, and I remember that the first time I painted the school bus letters, I got it wrong. Like my spelling was wrong, because I didn't know how to do it. And of course, I could have looked. I didn't have correct spelling correctors at the time. At least not that I was using something like that yet. And eventually, I had to repaint that. So pretty much what I was doing, I think I was gathering all the inspiration I have taken from looking at picture books at the library. And I didn't have anyone specifically in mind at that moment, but it was just like a collection of all the things that I have seen. Some of my first inspirations, not that necessarily are in this book, but I was very inspired by David Shannon. By Marjorie Priceman. I love the way that Marjorie Priceman does all her figures that seem so fluid, that they don't seem to have straight lines. They are always kind of like blending one with the other in their shapes, in their moves. I love that. And then I also was trying desperately to figure out how David Shannon did her paintings. I could see when I look at some of his images in books that there seemed to be layers, that I could see that there was a color underneath, and then there was another one. And that's what I was trying to do here. Like I said, not necessarily looking at his work, but that was one of my attempts to see how you use paintings. At the time, I also wasn't very experienced in painting. When I came to the United States and I saw picture books for the first time, also as I wanted to make them, I knew that I was going to have to learn. And it wasn't much later from the time when I had just bought my first set of paints and brushes. So I was still trying to learn what you do with the brushes. How do you do with acrylic paints that they sometimes dry so fast that sometimes they are also very forgiving. I was just learning about all those things.
Yeah, the translucent colors, the layers of colors, the kind of flowing lines, we see that all throughout your work. From 2003, Harvesting Hope, the story of Cesar Chavez.
Yeah, well, Harvesting Hope also had that quality that most of what I painted, the way that I painted, had very few straight lines. Maybe you can see there the eagle because it's a symbol of the Union of Farm Workers. I kept it with straight lines, but even more so when I was making Harvesting Hope, I was very, I was moving, I was learning how to paint, very influenced by the story and also by the feelings and the emotions that the story has. I don't know, we don't have that image here, but that image in where they are working the land and they had just lost their farm and they become migrant workers, and the text reads something about them earning very little money every day, always talking about their dreams at night, but every time speaking less and less about their dreams because the work was so hard, and usually their backs hurt because they had to do this work, which is when you do some of the harvest, especially strawberries, for example. Farm workers used to have to work with a very short handle hoe. So it was a very short tool, which meant that workers had to bend over to work the land. And so I made an image referring to that kind of work. And when I painted like I said, I was just learning, but when I painted that scene, I wanted to have the earth and almost like wrapping people, because that was what's happening. They were inside the land, just bending over, and the image is all dark because it's the color of the soil. But most of what I was doing there, especially because I was very new at illustrating and painting, was really take inspiration from the feelings of the text, from the emotions that the text convey, and I was trying my best to put them into shapes, colors, spaces, composition, and the characters.
Well, there really is that sense of warmth and empathy and emotion through those illustrations.
I love this book. Harvesting Hope is a book that was like they had given me a great gift, or almost like a gold medal, just by giving me that text to illustrate. Because I learned to recognize someone who was very similar to me as a hero. someone I had not known about before. When they offered me to make the illustrations for Harvesting Hope, I was very happy, but I was also a little preoccupied because I had no idea who Cesar Chavez was. Cesar Chavez is not someone that we learned about in our school or our textbooks here in Mexico. So my learning happened as I was making Harvesting Hope.
So our next book is Just a Minute, a Trickster Tale and Counting book. This was your first book that you authored and illustrated.
Yes, indeed. I actually wrote this book before I made Harvesting Hope, but because it was a book that I wrote myself, it took a while to be accepted for publication. I wrote this book at that's when I took a class. I took a class for writing children's book, although that's not where I wrote it, but I took a class for illustrating children's books at Berkeley Extension. And our teacher there, she was trying to teach us how to do concept books. And she said, well, we are gonna make a concept book and you can choose. You can make an alphabet book, you can make a counting book. And I decided I was gonna make a counting book. And then because it was a class for illustrating and not for writing, she said, just bring any text. You know, you can also bring something that is not yours, but that you can use to create a dummy and some sketches from the story. And in just a few days, I wrote the story, and because it had to be quickly, you know, which I always feel like it shows something about creativity, which is that if you have a lot of time to do something, you might put a lot of thinking on that. And most of the creation and the creative work doesn't need thinking. It just needs doing. So when I wrote this, I was just learning how do you tell a story, and also how do you tell it visually. So I made Just a Minute in just a few days, the writing, but then I was able to develop the story during the class, and my teacher was very taken by the work that I have created. And so she suggested that I submit it to editors, publishing houses. And I thought that was kind of crazy. Like I wanted to learn how to make books, but I didn't know that I was imagining that I was gonna publish them. And
Yeah, well, and you did, and to much acclaim. You received quite a few awards, and that was your first Pura Belpré Award.
that was my very
Illustrations.
first, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I love this book. It's about Senor Calavera, this
Yes.
grandma beetle, and he's about ready to take her away.
Oh, yes. Yes. At the beginning, that part of the story, a lot of publishers found it problematic. So, like I was telling you, my teacher was very encouraging, and she said, will you let me take this story to my publisher? And she did, and she encouraged me to send it to other places, and I did too. And I got some really nice responses, but most of the responses read something like, we like your work, we like your illustrations. Do you have another story? Because this story is scary.
Yeah, well, he's friendly, and really, Grandma Beetle, whoops, I guess I just have one. She is the trickster.
Oh, yes, she is a trickster. But at the
Yeah.
time, there was also the industry which is just now starting to open up to certain stories. At that time, it was even more difficult to see a story that had so much of the Latinx or Mexican culture in it, and I can see that some publishers were afraid of Señor Calavera. I can see that.
Yeah, but she delays and gets to celebrate another birthday.
Yes.
2004 Sand Sister, author Amanda White.
That's right. This is a
Sweet
book
story.
I did. After I finished both Harvesting Hope and Just a Minute, which even came out at the same time. I was still trying to find my way, and a friend recommended, a teacher actually said that perhaps there was going to be, I think it was ALA in San Francisco, and I had been invited to go and visit the exhibits. And what this teacher recommended is that we should go and look for the publishing houses in their exhibits who had work that I like. And that if I saw something that I like, to go and ask for the editor and say, I really like your work, and I also make books, I also illustrate. And I did that. I went and I looked around and I found the booth of Barefoot books. And I really like what I saw they had at the shelves. And I asked for the editor, and they gave me the contact. What I did is I left a sample of my images, and eventually this book happened.
So I think we're going to have to move a little more quickly here because I want to make sure we have plenty of time to discuss Dreamers.
All right.
But we've got some great stuff to still look at. So this is Los Gatos Black on Halloween, 2006. Love the witches.
Yes, those are my aunts. I got inspiration for this book from a lot of my relatives. And it is raining here right now. Maybe you can hear it. Well, let's see how the sun comes across. But this is a book written by Marisa Montes. Marisa Montes, she passed away already, but she is Puerto Rican author. And one of the things that she did beautifully was to have fun both with English and Spanish. So the text is not bilingual in the sense that has been translated, but that is intertwined. And I love that about her text. And when I made Los Gatos Black in Halloween, I thought now they are giving a Halloween book to a Latina woman. I never celebrated Halloween here growing up in Mexico, never. That was a very foreign thing for me, so much that when I went to live into the United States, my first year there, I was pretty surprised to see going outside, pushing my son's stroller, and seeing that there were houses that had these cobwebs or that had giant spiders or blood dripping from somewhere, and I didn't know what was going on. So I remember going back to the house of my mother-in-law that I was living with at the time, and asking, what is that? What's happening in the neighborhood? And she said, oh, it's Halloween. So when they give me this book to illustrate, I felt like they don't know what they are getting into. Because what I did was to bring a Halloween that was created by all the things that I used to be scared of when I was a kid, when I was a child here in Mexico. So the inspiration for all these ghosts, monsters, beings are from ghosts and apparitions and stories that I hear as I was growing up.
Okay. Oh, A Little Night, Nochecito from 2007. This is a bilingual book. You're the author and the illustrator.
Yes, exactly. That was published at the beginning. It was published separate version, and then most recently they created what was our original idea, which was to make a bilingual book. So I like it much better now that you can find both texts in one same book. And this book was inspired by actually by my mom and my sisters, and just the way that my mother used to get us ready to do anything, to go out, to go to a party, to go to school, and the way that I did, but especially some of my sisters did too, that they will hide so that my mom will not get them dressed up or get their hair done. So I I took inspiration from that, from my mom, and the way that she took care of us, but also the way that she used to be playful. She still is a playful woman, you know, but when we were growing up, and also this child, if this child is the night, um, how how would she look like and what her life would be like? This is a story that I wrote first, and then I knew that I was gonna have to figure out how to illustrate, and that these images, they tested my limits. The fact that I'm not a painter and that I have very little knowledge of art and painting made it difficult for me to do what I wanted to do. I think that at the end I was very happy, but I had a task. I gave myself the task to make a book that was dark like the night, and it was luminous at the same time. And when I was making these images, I was frustrated all the way until the last day. I work on this book, I work on every image, and when I was done with a whole set of paintings, I did something that I always did with my paintings when I was still doing it, painting on paper, because now my original art is actually digital. But at the time they were still on paper, and what I did is I spread them on the floor and look at them to see if they had consistent, if they look fine. And I remember feeling really, really frustrated because to me they didn't work. I had finished the story, the whole set of paintings, and they didn't look right to me. Because trying to work with darkness and trying to make it luminous, it was something I had not really idea how to create. So one by one, I brought them back to my table and I added something, another layer of color, another layer of darkness, and a dot of white. And at the end of the day, I had done it. I was finally happy with what I had created.
Yes, I think you came with the right combination of that sort of dark nighttime sort of atmospheric effect, but also with the luminous color. I apologize, this is not a high-res image, but I wanted to include it because it's just, it's so indicative of your style with those beautiful curved organic shapes, the use of the spiral with the Milky Way and the calla lilies, and even at the end of the mother's braids. But I love that little dress made out of crocheted clouds.
Yes, I had, when I was a little kid, I had a dress pretty much like that my mom made for me, that she crocheted for me. And I actually have a photograph of myself somewhere where I'm dressed as a butterfly. I have wings that my mom made, and I'm wearing that same dress that my mother made for me. So I love this image.
Well, it's a very archetypal tale with Mother Sky and Little Night and making her.
That's right. And the volcanoes, you see the volcanoes right there?
Yeah.
Those are I'm in love with those volcanoes, so you might find them in many of my books. Those are Popocatépetl and Iztaccíhuatl, which are the most, they are the I guess the most famous volcanoes here in Mexico, and they are part of a legend. And if you are familiar with the work of Duncan Tonatiuh, he has a story which is called The Prince, I'm forgetting the name right now, but if you look for his work, he has a story about these two volcanoes, the Princess and the Warrior. Thank you. I'm reading here the comments, and they are lovely. I thank you for all the comments that you are writing here. And indeed, The Princess and the Warrior is a book that in which he depicts these two volcanoes. I've been in love with these volcanoes since I was a little child, so they tend to appear in most of my books.
So Senor Calavera is back.
Oh, yes.
Case.
Yes, he was back. When I made Just a Minute, I remember I never thought that I was going to make another book about Senor Calavera. But I was one day with my son's father in Veracruz, which is where we met and where my son was born. And we were visiting, and I remember that we started talking, and I told him, you know, I'm never going to make another book about Senor Calavera, but I always imagine what will happen if he actually came back and kept his promise that he leaves at the end of Just a Minute, where he says, I'll be back for your next birthday party, and you can count on that. And as I was talking with Tim at that moment, I remember thinking, well, if he came back to the birthday party, for sure he wouldn't know what to do. Senor Calavera is not an expert in life. He's not an expert in celebrating life, which is what birthdays are about. So he probably wouldn't know that he needs to bring a present. And from that idea, Just a Minute was born. And I love what Just a Minute proposes. Like, even for me, as someone who made it, is this idea that presents are much more and sometimes much more different from what we usually see as presents. That sometimes the gifts that we can give someone we love are not necessarily something that we are going to buy at the store, but it might be something that we might have imagined that they could have, something that we can create ourselves, something that comes from inside of us. Like one of my favorite presents in that story is that he brings a box of tickles, of cosquillas, of tickles. You know, like, if you were gonna make a present of tickles, how would you bring that? And I thought, well, he's gonna bring them in a box, and just that's gonna be the gift that he gives to Grandma Beadle. But you know, at the end, this is a love story, and Senor Calavera ends up bringing a present that no one else could bring.
Is that Abuelito?
Yes, Abuelito. Grandpa Selmiro, yes.
Yes, the perfect gift. And Grandma Beetle has another birthday party. And she looks like a beetle. Again, that wonderful rounded organic shape.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, when I was making Just a Minute, the idea I have in my mind was of a beetle. And I don't know if you heard this story before, but what my inspiration was these beetles that we have here in Mexico that we call mayates. And mayates are the beetles that are brown and round. And I remember when I was a child, they would be flying inside the house, they get inside the house. And because they seem to be always going somewhere, even if they bump against the glass of the window, and then they end up on the floor with their bellies up, they are still moving and trying to keep going. And I thought Grandma Beetle is just like that. She's a woman who keeps going. She doesn't stop. She just keeps on living.
Absolutely. Strong, independent women are kind of a theme, an ongoing theme in your stories. This sweet book, Floating on Mama's Song by Laura LaCamera.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think we're going to have to kind of move along at this point.
Yes,
so we can, again, I just wanted to point out this book by the author is Maya Soetoro-Ng. She's the sister of Barack Obama. And this book was, she wrote it so that her daughters would know about their grandmother, Ann Dunham,
right.
who had passed before they were ever born.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about the Georgia O'Keeffe painting, Ladder to the Moon. Was that an inspiration? Was that a direct homage?
Yes, Maya talks about that, how she had this postcard with a painting of Georgia O'Keeffe, and it's called, I believe it's called Ladder, the Ladder, but what it has is a ladder that just goes nowhere but just to the sky and the moon. That was her inspiration, and from there she created a story in which she wanted to honor the generations, like the strength of a grandmother, but also the growing strength of a child that never got to meet each other, and she just made it possible in this book. But she was also honoring that her mother had been someone who was always thinking of servicing, of giving service to others, and those who needed it. And I think that she did a really beautiful job writing this story, which has a lot of symbolism underneath. One of the hardest parts of making this book for me was kind of giving also my own interpretation to all the symbolisms that she works into this story.
Well, and speaking of Georgia O'Keeffe, Georgia in Hawaii, when Georgia O'Keeffe painted what she pleased.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is another story that I felt very culturous, because this is a part of Georgia's life that we don't really know much about, which is that she actually went to Hawaii and she painted things in Hawaii, but just in that style of Georgia. She painted what she wanted. She was brought there to paint pineapples, and she was there for many months and never painted a pineapple until the very end.
Right. She wanted to do what she pleased. She wanted to go where she wanted, when she wanted. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Oh, Nino Wrestles the World. What a fun book.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm wondering how is the light here. It's getting dark, and I hope that you can still see me well. Niño Wrestles the World is among my favorite books, and I'm reading some of the comments here, and thank you for being here. And some people are talking about that maybe I will play my ukulele, and those are actually jaranas, and they are folk instruments from this area of my country here in Veracruz. So here we have Niño Wrestles the World, and today I'm wearing my El Santo t-shirt. El Santo is probably the most well-known luchador of lucha libre here in Mexico, and he is an inspiration for the book Niño Wrestles the World. At the same time, Niño Wrestles the World is inspired in many other things, among them the things that I used to be afraid of when I was a little kid. And when I was making Niño Wrestles the World, I was thinking that if you wanted to defeat your fears, how will you do it if you are a child? And what I know is that children are really, really good at having great imagination. And they are very, very good at playing, at using toys. They are also very good at making, teaming up and working with others. And so Niño was born, but like secretly, actually, he's kind of like, he's he's me in a way, you know, because I see him as this boy who goes and wrestles his fears because he has fears. And I was that kid. I was a kid that was fearful of many things, real and unreal. And I know that I'm an adult that is also fearful of things. And I have learned through books and through life that one of the ways to I'm not even going to say conquer your fears. It has nothing to do with conquering. It has to do with experiencing. Is making art, is getting to know the things that you are afraid of. And that's what I did with this book. I just took everything that I was afraid of when I was a kid, and I made a story of them. And then I got to play with them. What Niño does is play with his fears.
And there's this wonderful sketch in the exhibit of El Chamuco.
Yes, that's
Love
right.
That.
Those two images are there, and that the first one that you see with Niño is the first study that I did, trying to see how it would look like if I painted him. And then the other image is the line work that I did, because the way that I work for this book is that I created line work with ink on paper. And here on one of the edges, you can see a little bit of the colors. I roll color, just paint on paper, and scan that, put all of that in my computer, and then I put different layers of color and drawings to create the illustrations. So this is a combination of something that was made on my drawing table, but then later all put together in the computer.
Okay, great. I think I'll just show this as a project you did in 2013. Is that right?
That's right, for America the Beautiful. And this was very significant for me, because I made that book at the time when I decided I was going to become a citizen of the United States. By the time I've been living in the United States for almost 18 years, and I never thought that I was going to become a citizen, because I was a little afraid of what that meant. As my status as a person that I'm a Mexican. Sometimes I will feel like, do I need to become a citizen of the United States to be worth it, or is it okay just to be me, you know? But then when they offered me to make this book, which is only one illustration because it's made by different artists, I remember thinking, the United States had been beautiful to me. So maybe it's time that I not only sing my praises, but also that I become a citizen. So I made that drawing and that painting at the same time that I became a citizen, and then I went and I bought it for the first time.
Viva Frida. This
Yes.
you received another Pura Belpré for
Yes.
this is a book you received the Caldecott Honor for, the first Latinx
Yes.
illustrator to receive that.
Mhm.
Beautiful book.
Thank you.
The text is so evocative, 1 or 2 word short sentences. The mixed media illustrations are beautiful. Can you talk just a little bit about the process that you used?
Yeah. Well, the process was not very different from when I used to play with my dolls. It was just as joyful as that. The difference was that when I was a little kid, I wish that I had had someone like myself who could sew dresses like that, or make papel picado like that, and create those elements so that I could put them in on a table or something and play with them. And that's pretty much what I did. I had this idea that I wanted to make a book about Frida, and not only so that I will honor Frida. What I really wanted to do was to create a mirror for children to see themselves and realize that, like Frida or any other artist, they have anything they need to create. that's why such a short text, because it's more like this reflection that when you create, you see, you search, you have surprises, you dream, you play, you have realizations, and ultimately you live. And that's why we create art, because we are living. And I wanted to make this book so that it spoke of that it was simple, but also that it was rich, because I created Viva Frida in a way that has kind of like two different parts of living, which is life as real life, which I represent with puppets and dolls. And then there is the interior world and the interior life, which is creation. And that's when I turn into paintings on paper as to represent the work that she did as a painter, but also that was her dreams, her interior world that I made in this book as paintings on paper, different from the other times and where the story is told with puppets and just everything 3D.
Yeah, the use of mixed media is really brilliant. And these tableaux that you put together, all the handmade elements, the puppets, the clothing, the embroidery, all the props, and then the lighting and the photography. It's really extraordinary.
Thank you.
Oh, the sequel for Nino and his horrible or horrendous sisters.
It's like my sisters were for me, my terrors. Yes.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and just move on to Dreamers, because we do want to give some time to this book, your most recent publication. So yeah, take it away. This is the cover. This is the story of you coming to the United States with your son and finding a new life, making a new life.
You know, for a long time, people have asked me, my editor, they've been asking me that I should write about how I came to the United States. And I always thought, like, what is there to tell about coming to the United States, especially because I make books for children and my story wasn't about a child. It was as I came as an adult. But then some things happen. First of all is that I started hearing, like all of us did, about politicians in power talking about the identity of immigrants. And I knew that if someone was going to speak about who an immigrant is, it's going to be us. We cannot be defined by the words of others. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to write my story. But I was still a little preoccupied of, like, there isn't any car chases in my story. I came into the United States. I crossed a bridge. I did walk a bridge, but other than that, I was received. I had a visa that was given to me when I entered. I didn't have it before, but they gave it to me. They gave me a fiancé visa. I had my baby with me, and I was coming to make a family. I was here with the person I was going to marry. And then how do you tell that story for children so that it really identifies with that? So same as with Frida, I wasn't making a book so that people can see a story that was an art story, because it's not. What I did is I gave myself permission to make my story valid as the story of any child and any immigrant is. Because we have this tendency to believe that the only stories that are worth putting in books are those that have something that we are all gonna be wow from the story. But the truth is that the immigration story of everyone is full of learning, is full of things that we have had to overcome. It's full of love. It is full of so much that I decided I was gonna make this story and tell my story more like an invitation so that children who read it and or even adults will know that I want to hear their stories too. And so I decided to make the illustrations using some of the materials that were significant to me, that were significant to my story of me going to the United States. So I did something similar to what I did with Nino, which is that I painted things, I painted on paper, but I also took photographs and scanned things that were significant, like the blouse that the mom is wearing here is, I scanned a blouse that I had for many years. It's a blouse that I bought here in Mexico, but that I wore in the United States a lot during my first years living there. Many of the things that you will see inside this book are significant. Eventually, when the baby is finally wearing more than diapers and he's wearing pants, what I did is I scanned an outfit that I made for my son when he was 3 years old. And that was an outfit that we used for Carnival in San Francisco. Carnival in San Francisco was that moment when I felt like I really belonged to this place that had felt to me foreign, that I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand the language. I remember finally participating in Carnival with my son, and I made our outfits. And that was one of the first times that I used paints. I bought paints for fabric, and I did the sewing of our outfits, and I painted them with my hands. And I still have that pants that he wore. So when I made Dreamers, I scanned the pants, and I used them to paint the pants that he wears eventually. So the Dreamers is full of symbols and things that I love. You might see
I love all the animal imagery, the migratory.
That's right. Those are the migratory animals: bats, swallows, and monarchs. Monarch butterflies are the ones that you see there.
So tell me a little about this dress and the feathers on your dress. I love that.
That's right. That's right. Well, when I was making the illustrations, I didn't know how this mother was gonna be dressed. The story tells different times in life, in fact, but I didn't want to dress her differently because it was becoming more like a legend. I was telling a legend. I felt at some point, and then I was still struggling. Like, what is she gonna wear at the bottom? I had the blouse, but what is she gonna wear? And I remember three things. First, I remember how I felt when I crossed from Mexico into the United States for the first time, because I didn't know if they were gonna let me in, and I had to go to the immigration office. And here in Mexico, we all know that if you go to an immigration office so that they will let you into the United States, you have to dress well, because otherwise they won't let you. And this is a rumor. Everybody talks about this. The reality is that it is much more harder than that. It has nothing to do with the way you dress. It has to do with so many other things. But what happened to me is that I didn't have the right, I feel like I didn't have the right clothes to cross. I didn't. And the other thing that I remember is that when I was a little kid, and during the festivals at school, my mom will make my outfits, those outfits that maybe we were gonna do a dance, or we were gonna recite or sing a song. And not all the families had the economy to create something made out of fabric. So my mom, what she will do is sometimes she made my outfits out of paper. And I remember being embarrassed. I didn't want to wear those things made out of paper. Once I even had cardboard boots I didn't want cardboard boots. I wanted real boots, but I had to wear them. And I remember feeling the shame of not having something that was made of real fabric. And I thought, well, maybe this woman is gonna wear a skirt made out of that thing that feels shameful to her, which is a skirt made out of paper. And this is the other thing that I remember, which is that here in Mexico, among the Aztecs, among the ancient beliefs, some of the sacred women, they were in the skirt their powers. So then you might have the one that is wearing a skirt made out of snakes, or the one that is wearing a snake made out of the Milky Way, the one who's wearing a skirt made out of the sky and the stars. And I thought, this mother is gonna wear her power in her skirt. She just doesn't know it yet. She thinks that she's wearing something that makes her be less, because she's wearing something so humble and so simple as a paper skirt. It's not even a real skirt. And yet she has no idea that she brings in that skirt, the power that she already has. She's gonna be a creator. In that paper, she's gonna make her books, she's gonna make her drawings, she's gonna just create a new life for her. And so this is what she's wearing. The skirt, I made it by, I scanned tissue paper, crepe paper, and brown paper, and I gave her this colorful skirt that, to me, you don't see it there because it's an image that doesn't move. But for me, that skirt is flickering, is moving, is trying to get somewhere, and that's what she wears all along.
And it's a little fuzzy, not high res, but I thought it was important to include. The theme of language and the power of language is so important in the book.
Yes, yeah, this is actually one of my favorite images, because it's this encounter finally to this place of the United States, and you can see the mother's face, and I remember feeling like that constantly, which is this confusion, this idea that, okay, I'm here now, but now what do I do with this? And yet the baby is curious and happy, and this is this moment for me of portraying the confusion and the anguish that sometimes we feel when we have arrived to a new place and we realize that we don't even have the tools to understand what is being told to us. I remember also, like, I included that banner that says give thanks, because thanks is something that is very important to me. But I also remember that somehow it also felt imposed sometimes that we had to be thankful for being received in a place, in a new place, when I think that thanks have to go in two directions. The ones that we arrive to a new place, we are thankful that we have been received and have an opportunity to come and thrive in a new place. But the people that receives, I think that we also should be thankful of receiving others in this place, just as children and families sometimes are coming through the border or trying to come through the border, and I don't believe that we are thankful enough of the things that these people bring to our lives. Right now, we are living in a time and where we are actually afraid of immigrants, and where we are thinking that if an immigrant comes into the United States, we are going to have to share what we, so hard work for. That thing, now they are going to take it. Now we are going to have less because we are going to have to share with the others, and they didn't work as hard for that. When in reality, anyone that comes to a new country is bringing so much. So if we are going to be thankful, I think that we are going to have to be thankful in two directions. Thankful that we are received, but also thankful that we can receive people that bring so much that is going to be given to us as well. And someone was asking me, I'm sorry, if I can read the letters in the sky. Yeah, and those were just images of confusion. I don't have it now here with me, but it says something like what? Because I remember when I had just arrived to the United States, that was something that I say over and over again, you know, and the way that people told me constantly, say something, say something, and when I try to speak, people will not understand me, and they will say what all the time. I had a lot of adventures, but also sometimes where I felt inadequate. I felt like I was treated as most people who doesn't speak the language is treated, which is like, you are dumb. You just don't understand, you know? And what you don't know is that inside of every one of us, there is so much richness. We know so much, there is so much knowledge, there is so much culture, everything, but not being able to put it in the spoken words, it seems to have give this appearance that you are just not good enough for, even for being friends, for having communication.
Yeah, and that's what this image conveys as well. I think the text for this page is, there were so many things we didn't know, unable to understand and afraid to speak. We made lots of mistakes.
Lots of mistakes. And so I made these drawings based on the mistakes that I made. Like, so you see the mom there with the telephone. I was afraid of answering the telephone when I had just arrived to the United States. And I made mistakes. Sometimes I got into buying something I didn't want to buy. And I remember years later, they told me, you sign up for this through the telephone. Someone called me and even recorded me. And all I hear the recording when I already spoke enough English. And I remember hearing this lady just saying, so we are going to put this in your card and blah, blah, blah. And all I say is, okay. And then you see the mom with in front of this map, because I made that mistake too. I remember being invited once specifically to visit a friend in a place called something like El Cerrito. And I knew that I could go to the train station and take the train in that direction, but I could never find the place in the map, because that didn't, the way that I read things in Spanish, it was very different from the way that it's written in English. I couldn't find the place, which was called actually El Cerrito, which is a word in Spanish, but I had no idea that that's how you pronounce it in English, El Cerrito. And then I did something just like that. I went inside the fountain inside of, which is right there in the Embarcadero in San Francisco, with my son. And, you know, my son was being a baby and being a hot day, he wanted to go inside the fountain, and we did until, yes, someone came and told us that we couldn't be there. Yeah, those were mistakes I made as well.
Discovering the library.
That was a joyful moment. And, you know, it obviously wasn't exactly like this. My first library that I visited was in Walnut Creek. And that was a place that my mother-in-law took me to. And I had no idea where we were going. She just put me in her car, because at the time I was absolutely heartbroken, depressed, and homesick. I just wanted to go back home. And I was living in her house, and she was trying to do everything that she could have so that I would be a little happier. And so one day she tells me, getting just signals to get into her car. I have no idea where we are going. And to my surprise, I push my stroller into this building. I don't know what it is. And what I see inside is full of books. And I remember being afraid, and that's why some of the text in this spreads is like it was this place. It was mysterious. It was unbelievable, because at that point I still didn't know if I was supposed to be in there. The fact that my mother-in-law, who was a United States citizen, who was someone from there, had taken me there, gave me this idea that it was okay for me to be there. But at the same time, I didn't know if I could take the books from the shelves. I didn't know. And eventually I moved into San Francisco and I discovered my own public library, which was only 4 blocks from where we lived. And that was my solo experience. Then I went in there trying to figure out if I wasn't gonna do something wrong. The first libraries that I visited on my own, my son was still a baby, and I was afraid that I was going to be kicked out. My son, usually we will get there and be there for 2 minutes and he will start crying. And then I had to leave and go back home. And then I will come back, and little by little, I will stretch the time that he was able to stay. But there were times where he will cry and I was trying to find a specific book, or not even that, because I didn't know what books were there, but I was just looking through the books in the shelves. And there were times where people yell at me and they say that patrons, not the librarians, but they say that, get out, because I was there with a baby who was starting to scream. I know that. And what was so fantastic about my library, my public library, my neighborhood public library, and many other ones too, is that the librarians that I met were those who made me feel that I belong there. And it might be surprising to know how was that. The truth is that pretty much what they did is just to let me stay there, to let me be. If my son will go through and then try to grab the books, they didn't scold me because my son was taking books off the shelves. In fact, they went there and they offer other books. So the moment where I find the library, it really changes everything for me. And I don't know if we have the image here, but then there is this image where, no, we don't have it. There is this image where the mom is stretching across the page, and she has the baby just like reaching, the baby is reaching towards the librarian, and the librarian is giving them a library card. And in that image, if you get to see it in the book, the backpack that she's wearing is finally open. It starts being open when she gets into the library, but that moment is when the sun comes out of her backpack. The things that she's been carrying with her that had been in there, the things that she brought from where she come from, and suddenly that moment of happiness, even the sun comes out. Obviously, I love this book because, not so much because it tells my story, but I'm going to tell you why, Marcy. Because in this book, I try to convey everything that I've learned since I arrived to the United States. And I've learned many things. Among them, I have learned that that we are enough to be received, that children and families that are trying to come in the United States, they don't need to, they are not coming to a place like the United States so that they can be transformed in something better. So that now they can come from their deficiency and their deficient countries into a place where they are finally, going to be fine, and they are going to grow into something better. Yes, these characters, they grow into something better, into not even something better. They grow into something else because we are all constantly growing up. We all are. So it's just, yes, they are going to grow into something else as well. But it's not because they were immigrants and where they were, they couldn't grow. And now they can. It's not even that. It's that we are going to grow anyway. but also the fact, and this page is very important to me. We don't have the text right here in this image, but this one was very important to me because it talks about that someday we will become something we haven't even yet imagined. But right now we are. And what I wanted here is that to tell every reader that I know, and they should know, that they don't need to become something else because they are already plenty, especially children. Children are everything. They are plenty. They don't need to become better. Their language that they speak right now, the way that they create right now, the way that they play at this moment, that is beautiful, is perfect. And it's this perfection that we are receiving when a new child comes into the United States, especially if they are coming from places like Mexico and Honduras and Guatemala and all these countries that usually are not welcome the way, you know, that other countries are welcome. So I wanted to, in this part of the book, just dispel this idea that now that we are in the United States, we are finally gonna, you know, grow up into something amazing. We are already something amazing. These children are already something amazing. And I want to tell them with this book that we are happy to receive them.
And so this is one of the last images in the book. And we'll end our slideshow here. But the text is, we are stories, we are two languages, we are lucha, we are resistance, we are hope.
Lucha, yes. Lucha, which means like we are warriors. Lucha is a word that is used to define that we are gonna fight for what we want.
Right.
Yeah.
So we are dreamers, soñadores of the world.
Yes.
And I love how little Kelly, the baby, is given his wings with the open.
Yes. We both became amazing readers. I mean, he did more than I do too. I love reading, but he being just a little baby, a little child, he was a book, pretty much. You know, he was a book with feet. Books were his life too. Yes.
So I know we've had lots of amazing comments.
Yes.
And we do have some questions in the Q&A, which I think we do need to try to get to.
My light so that you can.
Yeah. There you are. Okay. So, okay. Sure. Let's ask this one. Can you describe and tell us any meaning concerning your tattoos?
My tattoos. Sorry, there is a lot of noise because the street is just here behind me. Well, my tattoos. The first one I got was a bird. You don't see this somewhere here. Because in a way, I think it signified this movement in which I feel to be constantly now. Like the first time that I immigrated, it wasn't my plan. It wasn't voluntarily. It was, we got caught up here in something that I had not expected. I didn't come to the United States to live, and I end up living here. And so the first time I felt like my immigration wasn't voluntary. But through the years, and then when I decided to come back and live here in Mexico, then I felt that this going back and forth was something that I was deciding. Once I made the United States my home, it's like my heart was divided forever. And it was only gonna be whole when I could live in both places. And that bird signifies that constant immigrant that I feel like I am now. And then some of my other tattoos is that also when I came back to Mexico, I knew that I wanted to get to see and know other places that I haven't had a chance to see before when I live in the United States. Also because if I travel to Mexico, I usually came to see my family, but I didn't visit any other places. So since I've been living here, I've been going to South and Central America. And when I've been to places like Cuba and I went to Brazil, I've been trying, when possible, to get a tattoo created in those places. And that's, I don't know, I guess it's gonna keep growing.
Thank you. Here's another question from one of our attendees. Now that you work digitally, do you miss working in traditional drawing, painting media?
I don't, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because I still do that. Like all my drawings, they are all by hand. I have some here, you know, I don't know if you can see. Everything I draw is by hand. I cannot draw in my computer. So all of my first drawings, they are still all by hand. And then a lot of what goes inside my book is made by hand. Looking for dreamers, my name. There is the banner that says "Adiós Corazón." That one I embroidered. So I was at my table with my needle, my thread, my fabrics. Right now you see me right here, and we were talking about that before, right, Marcy? That this is a space where I have like my computer and my books, but then I have that other space that I still use a lot, even though there is work that happens here in front of my computer. There is a lot of work that I do in the other part of the house, which is my messy place, my messy space. And there I still paint on paper. A lot of the things that you see, even in the books that being finished digitally, is I painted on paper and then I scanned that. Many of the elements are still painted by hand. The only difference is that the finishing of the images is in my computer, so I don't miss it. I actually have the best of both worlds.
Okay, do you have a new book on the horizon?
I do have a new book, and I'm about to finish it. Just 2 days ago, I kind of like finished what's called interior art. That means all the art that tells the story. And I finished even revising it, which, you know, without that is not done. So that is finished, and now I still have to make the cover. I have to create the end papers and just a few more things, and I'll be finished with this book. This is where you usually find me all day here, because that work is made in my computer, and it's a book that will come out next year in the fall, and it's called Bright Star. And what I can tell you about this book is that it's a book that was born from all the many things that have been happening that made me feel that, especially our children, the generations and generations of children nowadays are gonna have a lot of pain to work through their lives, you know, pain that had been inflicted right now on them. And I had this question, is like, so now we have inflicted a lot of pain in children at the border, children at schools, with the school shootings, with violence, with many things. How this is a question that came to me, is that how do you heal something that feels irreparable? Something that has hurt someone so much, and now that person is supposed to heal it. And I'm going to tell you that I don't have the answer, but but my way to find an answer is to make a book. Making a book is this research outside and inside, looking for a way of how we heal, and trying to give myself an answer by making a book. And so I'm making this book that is a story that has to do with how the immigration policies affect the borderlands in many different ways, from the ecological point to the human point. And it's a story for children. And so I've been trying to juggle something that feels very complex to me, and once more make a book for children out of it.
That will come out next year, you said.
Yes.
We'll be looking for that, for sure. Let's see.
And thank you so much for your comments, everybody. I can feel your connection, your energy all the way here, and I cannot even tell you how it feels like to me. Cuando me escriben en español, además, when you tell me, you know, this is also my story, I know that we are connected, and that makes this moment for me very, very special. Your words are very special to me.
There's another question. It's kind of long, comments and a question, but I think the gist is there used to be a time when art galleries and museums would not show much interest in the work of illustrators. Maybe it wasn't considered fine art. You are obviously celebrated in the literary world and by organizations like the Irving Arts Center, but have you ever encountered any difficulties receiving the attention and recognition that you clearly deserve?
Well, when I was in the Nickel, which is the place where the exhibit originated, they were telling me, the organizers were telling me that they have a hard time for the committee of the museum, of the Nickel Museum, to want my work to be the one exhibited there, because precisely being an illustrator, and especially illustrator of children's books, sometimes is not considered like the high art or the fine art that will be at a gallery or a museum. And what I was told is that they fought very hard for it. And what happened is that they gave their first solo exhibit to a Latina woman like me. And I'm really happy about that. I don't think that I am the only one who might not be seen in this world of creation or art or books, or even in your own walls. I'm sure that many of you are going through that as well. And it has to do with the intersection of many things. Sometimes is that maybe you are making books for or art for children's books, which some people will think, oh, well, that's not real art. Or it might be that you are a woman and then someone says, well, you know, that she's not as good. Maybe they don't say it straight to you, but there is a feeling that comes from historical facts and culture that sometimes sees that what a women will do is not as well regarded as something that a man will do. And then if you're a person of color, then you have some other thing that might not give you the recognition that you deserve. What I know is that we are very, very valuable. And I know that among the people that I know, among the people who are like me or who live in this country or that are immigrants and live in the United States, also are Latinos or Latinas, there is so much talent. There is so much amazing work. And what I think that we need right now is for our world to start moving to a place of recognition of even of those things that sometimes we don't understand. I was telling you at the beginning that my book, just a minute at the beginning, the editors, they found it very scary, and they said this book was never gonna sell. You know, we as publishers could never sell a book like this. And I believe that when they say that, it was true. They couldn't sell that book because they couldn't see it for what it was. They couldn't see that there were a lot of readers that actually were waiting for a story like that. Like they might be waiting for your stories and for your works, for your art. But there are many of us that will receive that work, but we need to support each other. We need to make visible those voices and the work of people that maybe have been pushed towards the margins. We need to open up our vision, our lenses, and start seeing, just as the beginning, seeing and hearing what other people have to say. And that brings me even to the fact of saying that I will always offer you my work and bring my books and make my books for all of you. And at the same time that you look at my books, I hope that you will also be willing to look at the work that other authors of color, other Latina women, other people from Mexico or other places are also creating, because there are amazing things. I will invite you to always pair my work with someone else's work that maybe you have not seen before, that you have considered. Because some of those authors and some of those artists are going to be our children, the one that we are raising right now, the one that we are bringing this exhibit to. You know? So hopefully we will be very, very open to seeing the artwork of all these upcoming artists and authors and receive them with the same love that you are receiving mine right now.
Yes, all cultural institutions need to open themselves up to hear more voices and to bring in more marginalized segments of our community. Well, it's 7:30, a little bit past 7:30 at this point. Thank you everyone for your amazing comments in the chat section, and thank you for submitting your questions. I'm sorry we could not get to every single one of them, but you've been an incredible audience, and Yuyi, it's just been amazing to have you with us. We are so appreciative of you taking the time, and we wish you the best and, you know, all your future endeavors, and we want to see many more books coming from you. And everyone, if you want to see more of the exhibit, we do have a 360 virtual tour on our website. You can actually navigate yourself through it virtually and stop at every single piece. Or you can come to the Art Center if you're able to. We do have a limited capacity and modified hours, but we are open. Our galleries are open, and we'd love for you to come visit us. And Yuyi, again, thank you so much. You really are an inspiration.
It's been a pleasure. Muchas gracias a todos aquí, mira, hasta oyendo de Guatemala, de muchos lugares. Muchísimas gracias, con todo mi corazón. Thank you so much. This was lovely, Marcy. Thank you.
Our pleasure. So everyone, thank you so much for spending the time with us. Have a good evening. Keep reading, keep looking at art, and keep dreaming. All right, good night.